They both lived in what is now Harlem. My father rang the doorbell to Larry's house, and this utterly disheveled, appalling-looking troll who answered the door. I don't know what my father thought, because he was rather a tidy person. They went into the back room where the piano was, and hours later, he came out and realized that he'd met the lyric writer he wanted to write with forever, possibly.
We'll have Manhattan, the Bronx and Staten Island, too.
The early years for both of them were frustrating, and Daddy was about to take a job in the underwear business when Garrick 80s happened. And of course, it was full of hits, and they got reviews saying this bright, young, wonderful new songwriting team, and they had it made.
When balmy breezes blow.
Almost immediately, they were given the opportunity to do Dearest Enemy, their first book show in 1925. And there followed a whole succession of wonderful, adventurous musicals. In 1926, they did The Girlfriend and Peggy Ann. In 1927, in 28, they did Present Arms, She's My Baby. In 29, they did Heads Up and Spring Is Here. And so they were really hot on Broadway.
We'll turn Manhattan into an isle of joy.
That was the good part. The bad part was when he would disappear. Rodgers never knew where he would be and never knew when he would come back.
Gotta pull yourself together.
He was somewhat averse to working until you locked him in a room, and then he would write very quickly, but what it meant was that the music came first. He loved the nightlife. He was a bon vivant.
Rodgers and Hart were very different personalities, no question about it. In the Rodgers and Hart days, people would say, you know, that little guy's a nice guy, but be careful of the tall guy, he's a son of a bitch. And with Hammerstein, who was a taller man, exactly the opposite. The tall guy's really nice, but that short guy, be careful of him. They understood that the other was good for him and that the whole was bigger than the sum of the parts. They were able to touch and find something that lives to this day. The Depression had a severe effect on Broadway, and the group went out to Hollywood. Rodgers and Hart, the Gershwins, Kern.
My parents lived extremely well, but they spent it all and decided that the better financial bet was to move to Hollywood, where they treated you like dirt, but you got a monthly salary. Larry moved right into the house with my parents. He was really a member of the family and much beloved. He never came to the house without bringing a present. He was around all the time, smoking the cigars, rubbing his hands together like this and going, and then cackling with laughter.
Their time in Hollywood, Rodgers said, had been one of the worst times of his life. They had worked first at Paramount, and then they signed at MGM. Even though they produced some very good work, very little of it ended up on the screen. They worked for a long time on an almost totally aborted project called Hollywood Party that only one of their songs ended up being in. They wrote a screenplay and songs called I Married an Angel that ended up getting in trouble with the censorship people, so it couldn't be filmed. They also did one of their big hit songs for MGM at that time called Blue Moon, but it wasn't called Blue Moon for quite a long time because it kept changing. First it was in Hollywood Party, then taken out of that. Then it was used in a Clark Gable movie, Manhattan Melodrama, all under different words.
Blue Moon was rejected over and over and over again. Somebody said to him, why don't you write a conventional song, something with June and moon, probably with tongue-in-cheek. He wrote Blue Moon, and it's stood him and us in good stead ever since.
A lot of Larry Hart's love songs, Blue Moon is a good example, they aren't about falling in love, they're about being in love unhappily. And that was probably as close as he could come to being honest either with himself or with the public. He would get these fixations on chorus boys or other people who just would not find him physically appealing.
Rodgers said he wasn't even 5 feet tall, very homely, and had a kind of misshapen body, almost dwarf-like. He knew how unattractive he was, and it was a very painful reality for him to live with.
He was kind of like the clown that got left behind when the circus left town. He had a wonderful, engaging, endearing quality, but he just didn't have the certain spark that attracted other people to him. He did what so many of the great artists have done, turn to liquor.
You can listen to a lot of his songs and be able to tell that this was a person who had been very, very miserable in love.